Welcome to another edition of the 5-Star Zone. Rico Beard, Howard Griffith. You see that beautiful face on the Big Ten Network. Howard, interesting week last week. I think the Big Ten gained a little bit of credibility with the last-minute drive of Kyle McCord in Ohio State. Did we see Kyle McCord grow up and become that guy? I mean, because there was ample opportunity, a lot of fourth down plays, a lot of third and longs. You start off that last drive, missing two passes. They still made it down. They scored with 1 second to go.
And Notre Dame minus a defender on two plays.
Mistake.
Yeah, but I think the key here is that, he's continuing to grow as a quarterback. He had to make some big throws in that game, particularly down that stretch. And he stepped up to the challenge. And I think you heard just, how passionate their coach was after the game. I mean, he's been in a pressure cooker. It's still a pressure cooker at Ohio State. Yeah? So, it's one of those things.
He went full Howard Dean. I mean, I think I wasn't the only one that just heard. I was waiting for him to say, and then we're going to go to Penn State, and then we're going to go to Michigan. Yeah.
Yeah. But now, he was right there.
He was. When you see that pressure in Ohio State, I guess what's taking them so long to become Ohio State? Is it just waiting on Kyle McCord to become that guy?
Yeah, I think that's a big step. That's a big part of it. I think the other side of it, you look at the defense. The defense, I thought, defended the deep pass really well against Notre Dame. You knew they would be tested there, and they rose to the challenge in that area. Gave up some yardage on the ground, but I think people are going to do that playing against Ohio State. That's a good run. They have a good run game in Notre Dame. But you saw an offensive line really control the line of scrimmage as far as the run was concerned, and they made enough plays defensively. But I think it goes back to the quarterback coming down the stretch, being able to take advantage of his opportunity and dialing up some great plays and their playmakers stepping up.
Now, if you're Ohio State, is this a good week for a bye, or do you want to get back out there? Because, you just really turned that page, and then it's like, okay, well, now take the week off. Or do you want the week off?
I think it's a good week off for them. Obviously, that was an emotional game, going on the road and winning. I think it gives them an opportunity to go back and, assess the things that they've been able to have some good success with at the first part of the season. Really gives you a chance to do some self-scout, get some guys healthy as well. So I think it's a good time for a bye. You talk about coming after a big game, you just want to keep it rolling. But I think it's a good time for them to do some self-scout and also to scout some other teams around the league that they're going to have their hands full this year with, Michigan, obviously, and also add Penn State to that mix.
It's funny you mentioned Penn State, Howard, because I think we may have seen the closest thing to a perfect game that you see in baseball.
Yeah.
Penn State, what they did to Iowa, who last week was ranked. I feel like you may need to call the cops or the sheriffs. Like 74 yards of all, offense, 4 first downs. You literally gave them 1 first down each quarter.
Yeah.
I guess the question is Penn State that good, or is Iowa just not what we thought they were going to be, or is it somewhere in the middle?
I think it's probably somewhere in the middle. But this is a defense at Penn State that's going to stifle a lot of teams. And if you already have issues, those are going to be magnified when you play against a defense like that. You talk about guys, they got first rounders in the back end. They got first rounders on the D-line at linebacker. They've got players over there, and we haven't seen this type of talent at Penn State in a while. It's been a long time. So you couple that with the second year in the defensive scheme, and they're really growing, I think, defensively. And I think they're the real deal. And really, I may have said this a couple of weeks ago, but I think this defense really gets their offense prepared too, because they're competing against one of the best defenses in the country each and every day. So that's got to be able to help your receivers and also timing as far as your quarterback is concerned, because in some games, they're not going to see a team that's as good or as talented defensively as they see in practice.
No, because I often say Manny Diaz, I'm not trying to put labels on him, but sometimes, Howard, people are just really great at one thing. He may not be the greatest head coach, but when it comes to being a defensive coordinator, I don't think there's too many people better than him. You look at what he is doing with Penn State. Now, I'm quite sure he's going to get people looking at him for a head coaching gig again.
Yeah.
right now. I mean, as you said, all three tiers of the Penn State defense.
Yeah.
There's really no weaknesses there. And I'm watching Iowa just get dismantled. And look, I know that they were down some starters, but I was just sitting there like, wow, I'm this is about as close to witnessing perfection, holding a team under 100 total yards in a game. I mean, right now, James Franklin has that thing going. Your court, Drew Aller, I think for him, it's, what is he going to look like in that big game on the road? Yep. And I think that comes against Columbus in Ohio State later on this year. But Aller looks like he's feeling comfortable, but you do when you're playing at home. But I'm just looking at this Penn State team, and, it's always Michigan and it's always Ohio State. But Howard, I feel like some may be overlooking what James Franklin and the Nittany Lions have going on, what they got going on in Happy Valley.
Yeah, I would tell you, what are they, 6 this week in the country?
Yeah.
Maybe 6 or 7, somewhere in there. But this team probably isn't garnering the national attention that they probably deserve for the way they've been able to be able to play. And I think that's playing well for James Franklin, because that allows him to, just continue to fly under the radar. Everybody's talking about, we're talking about Colorado, what was happening there and what's going on in the Pac-12. And they're just playing unbelievable ball out there right now. And obviously people are more focused on Ohio State with the big matchup against Notre Dame, being able to pull that out, and Michigan to a certain extent as well. So Penn State's kind of in this area where, people respect them, but I don't think they're getting probably the credit that they probably deserve nationally.
No, and then we have Michigan. Harbaugh's back on the sideline. Michigan came out there. They ended up shaking off Rutgers. Rutgers, early in the game, it was 7-0. I didn't even get the game on, and I was just like, wait, did they just take the kickoff back or something? Like, I wasn't expecting them to see Rutgers up 7-0, but Michigan.
Right.
Here's what I've learned. This is Michigan. Expect slow starts in the first half, and then in the second half they pull away. They did that 2 years ago. They did that last year. I don't think it's any concern. It's just what they do. Now, later down the line, when it comes to the playoffs and all of that, well, we can bring this back up. But I think that this is a week that the running game could really make a statement, because with Nebraska sitting there at 2-2, the greatest team that Matt Rule has, the quarterback situation is still in Sims. I'm not sold on him. He's got injuries. But the run defense is pretty good. Again, the running game, Blake Corum, he's been about the best. Donovan Edwards is still a little MIA. But if you could go to Nebraska, where apparently it's going to be 95 degrees. I didn't know it got to 95 degrees in Nebraska. 95 degrees going up against that Nebraska run defense. If this is the game that Corum and Edwards can kind of break out, I think a lot of Michigan fans will breathe a little easier. You know that those two are going to get it done, but it's kind of like, okay, you're waiting for that, game where they each combine to rush for over 250 yards.
Yeah, you're looking for those big numbers out of the run game. But I think one of the things that Jim Harbaugh said this week was, he doesn't need all those miles on those running backs. He knows what they can do. It's about really getting them to the big games where they're going to need them down the stretch. And, it's kind of, you don't really hear about that as much at the running back position. But I think that was part of, what has come out of in the NFL, where guys feel like they're not being compensated the way they should when their contracts are up, because they end up signing, the good ones end up signing a 5-year deal. Or a 4-year deal with that player with a team option for a 5th when you're a first round or a high draft pick. And by the time you get to the end of that contract, what's your value? A lot of places you've got too much wear on the tire. God forbid if you've had a couple of injuries. True. So he's taking that and he's using that now with his players. He says it's about really getting these guys to the next level, to the big game, and also the next level with the least amount of wear on their tires as possible. And again, we've seen it you've seen it in basketball when you hear people talking about just managing their players' playing time. But I think you're starting to see that at Michigan, and Coach Harbaugh was not shying away from it. He told you exactly what he thought he needed to do with his backs to keep those guys healthy, and that's what they're going to do. So, but we all still want to see that run game take off, and really, it's one of those things where we really won't know what Michigan is and just really how good they are until we see them step up the level of competition, and it will this week. This is a Nebraska team that's still going to come out and play as hard as they can,
right?
And figure it out, and they do some good things. So this will be a nice challenge for them as they continue on their march to try to win the Big Ten championship again this year.
Yeah, their first road game of the season in Nebraska. But yeah, when I saw that temperature,
like what's going on over there?
Right in the Midwest. And I mean, it's going to cool off a little bit late night in Iowa. Howard, this has to be the game of the two teams just kind of licking their wounds from last week. Iowa, we talked about against Penn State, shut out. Michigan State, I mean, in the middle of all the Mel Tucker stuff that's going on, we'll get to that a little bit later on, but it was homecoming, and it wasn't quite a great homecoming for a lot of the alums watching.
Yeah.
You don't win many games turning the ball over 5 times.
No.
And I was there, lost in this game. The defense really played well. And a lot of people don't want to hear that because they're like, what do you mean the defense played well? They lost 37. Right. Man, there was a lot of short fields. I mean, the defense held, Tagovailoa to like about 200 some passing yards,
which is huge.
Right. I don't think anybody rushed the ball for over 40 yards, and they did what they were supposed to do. MSU shot themselves in the foot 3 times in the red zone. It's just somebody's going to leave this game between MSU and Iowa at night, and I feel like it's going to turn into a downward spiral. Iowa being blanked and just shut out against Penn State. Were we really that bad? And Michigan State, looking like a rudderless ship. I mean, what do you see in this game? I mean, Vegas is saying ain't nobody scoring.
This is going to be a tough one. But I think you're correct when you think about, one of these teams is obviously going to come out a loser, and how are they going to respond for the rest of the year? And you can create a scenario where both teams could really downward spiral if they lose this game. But they've got to come out and figure out a way. Iowa, I mean, offensively, we've talked about it for years. It seems like they just can't get it going. And we thought Cade would be the answer to help him out, help the program out. But it just is not. It's not working. Something's not working over there offensively. And they've got to try to figure it out. And I don't know that you can all of a sudden make some drastic changes in the middle of the year and think you're going to get a better result on the football field. But something has to get done. They have to be able to hang their hat somewhere on something when you think about Iowa from an offensive standpoint. And Michigan State, they've got to play mistake-free football. I mean, things are hard enough as it is, but when you start turning it over, man, you're nowhere near the type of team that can afford to just turn it over and think you can still walk out of a place with a win.
Now, it's funny because I was laughing on the radio show, and it's the movable force versus the easily resistible object. I mean, you got Brian Ferentz going up against Scotty Hazelton. Ferentz is fighting for his job. He's got to score 25 points. MSU defense is not the greatest of defense, and it's just kind of funny that, one of these guys is going to feel really good about himself.
Yeah.
It's going to be needed for one or the other team. But, this is a night game. It's going to be on Peacock and NBC, and I'm assuming it's a blackout. Look, it's always difficult to play. Iowa fans will show up regardless. So, it's just going to be an interesting game to see two teams that you feel bad for the loser because it could just really mark the beginning of the end for the season. We'll make it very difficult for the head coach to pull them out. And then speaking of which, since we're here, I mean, Michigan State finally made it official. They officially fired Mel Tucker. I mean, Howard, if you're MSU, first of all, if you're MSU, where do you go from here? And as a player, how do you move on? How do you move forward knowing that you had nothing to do with this? In a game, you turn the ball over, that's your fault.
Right.
This you woke up and saw like everybody else. This wasn't your fault. How do you just stay focused and just worry about what's happening on the field?
Yeah, it's really incumbent on those coaches to really try to get these guys dialed in. I mean, that's ultimately what you have to do as a coach. I'm sure, the players have that stuff on their mind. Okay, what's my next move going to look like? I'm sure people are reaching out to their family members, if not the players, saying, hey, you sure you want to be there? You sure you don't want a red shirt this year? So there are a lot of things that are going on that, they're having to try to manage, and to ultimately then think about, managing guys that may or may not want to be there is going to be tough for them. And that's why, listen, I think it's a reason these guys get paid a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right. And they have to deal with a lot of issues. And sometimes those issues are not even what's happening on the field. They're what's happening away from the field. And now at least there is a conclusion there that the players know exactly what's ahead of them. They've known already, obviously, but they know for sure because it's been made official. But I think Michigan State ultimately has got to figure out what direction they want to go and what they want the program to ultimately look like when they make the hire of the next head coach. Well,
I've said I think that Michigan State could be a top 15 team. And the reason why I think that's important is because next year you go to a 12-team playoff. You got 4 top Pac-12 teams coming into the conference. If you're a top 15 team, in money and revenue, they're there. In facilities, they're there. You just have to match up on the field. That makes you competitive each and every year. You may not make the playoffs every year, but at least you're vying for one of those spots, even if it's the 12th spot. Yeah. I do think that in my world, they can't go out there with hat in hand saying, help me, I'm poor. We'll just can't take anybody. I think that this next coaching hire, Alan Haller, the athletic director at Michigan State, this is crucial because I've said it before. Athletic directors don't get to hire 3 head football coaches. He's already hired one. This will be his second one. He's got to make this one the right person to take them, because I think it says a lot to me that this is going to be game number 5. This is the opt-out. This is the opt-out week for people to hit the portal. And so far, Howard, none of the players, since we've taped this right now, nobody's hit the portal. What does that say? Is this team saying, you know what, we believe in each other and we're just going to ride this thing through? Because I expected at least, I expected some to hit the portal, and so far, nobody.
Well, I mean, that's a good thing. It speaks to the job that Harlan Barnett has been able to do and been able to communicate, even though, they've lost the game. They've lost the previous game. So they've got to continue to do it. But working this roster is going to be a work in progress. It's going to be something, every day that they're going to have to try to manage. And, the other side of it, too, is where exactly are they going to go where they're going to be able to play like right away? If they go somewhere, they may still need to sit because they're not going to be acclimated to what's going on as far as the field is concerned.
See, I figured if you opt out now, you can at least save this year and you still have an extra year to get yourself ready. You figure out where you want to go, or maybe you come back to the school if you like the head coach. Let me make one correction, because I do now. I remember now, Bill Beekman actually hired Mel Tucker.
Okay.
So Alan Haller technically was there.
Right. Yep.
He was the man in waiting, but Beekman's final job as athletic director hired Tucker, and then he handed the keys over to Alan. So my apologies, Alan. This will be your first hire, not your second hire.
Yeah, and the reality is this. I think this is, but it's still an important hire. I think when you look at the way the league is going to be configured next year, you're going to need somebody who has some cachet. Yeah. I think, you have to, part of the next person's responsibility is, you want to hear how they're going to work the portal. What are we going to do as far as what do you need when you look at this roster? Where do you think this roster can be? And I think Alan, from the standpoint of being a former football player at Michigan State and also professionally, he has a good feel for where this team is from a talent standpoint. So he knows kind of what needs to be injected into the team. So I feel really confident that he's going to find the right guy. It's just a matter of, what does that look like? What is, do you need a program builder? Do you need, some hot name? What do you need? I mean, can Harlan Barnett turn this thing around and make himself a candidate for this job, which, they're all going to say that he is a candidate.
Right. Now, I think for Barnett, it really boils down to, he would have to run the table. He's got 3 games to really sell to people. He's got Michigan, which kind of counts as a game and a half. You got Ohio State on the road, and you got Penn State at Ford Field to end the season. Howard, if for some reason he went 3-0 in those games, then he put himself. If he doesn't get the job, he's on the short list of the 2 or 3 people that's really up for the job.
Yeah.
But that's what it's going to take. Is you're going to need somebody to really galvanize this program, and he's going to need some big time wins. Yeah, and you can't have your team going out there turning the ball over 5 times, because that was just like, wow. Because it was Maryland was trying their best to hand that game to them, and they were like, "No, you keep it. We're going to be good hosts.
We'll be all right."
Yeah.
And I think it's just one of those things. You're right. You got to win football games at the end of the day, if you want the job, right? And clearly he does. But again, I think it just comes down to, do you want that flashy offensive guy, right? I mean, this is really where the college game is right now. I mean, sure, you got to stop people. That's for sure.
I think if you're Michigan State, I don't even think it's necessarily the head coach. I think it's, if you could bring in and kind of go the route what Deion did and bringing in Kent State's coach to be the OC, if you can get that offensive coordinator from maybe a small college to come in and say, look, I'm going to make this fun. We may not be the best team, but we're going to be entertaining. We're going to throw the ball around. We know what recruits like. We know what our fans want to see. We're going to lose some games, but we'll lose games 45-38. We're going to make it entertaining. I think that will help out a lot. Defense takes some years to develop, and everybody wants a great defense. Everybody wants a defense like Penn State. But let's face it, Howard, nobody gets geeked to say, let's go watch a defensive struggle.
Right.
You want to see touchdowns. You want to see fun. You want to see long runs. You want to see deep passes. That's what you want to see. Yeah. And I think, to me, it comes down to, not only the coach, but just the coordinators and the style that you bring in, because I think that could help galvanize and bring this team back together.
Yeah, I think, I called the Illinois FAU game last week, and one of the things that was clear, those skilled players at FAU can play football. And I think that's always that's been a misnomer that, okay, some of the lower places, they've got all the athletes they need. The challenge becomes interior, offensive and defensive line, where it takes longer for a program to be able to develop them. But if you bring in a hotshot head coach with a great offensive philosophy, guys are going to flock there. I mean, shoot, you only need to look to UCLA, and you have one of the best quarterbacks right in your backyard. So if you played that style, maybe you would be in the mix, but you've got to be able to recruit. You've got to be able to get the best players. And when the best players are in your state, as tough as it's going to be, because obviously Michigan's recruiting them too, they've got to be attracted to something. So what is it going to be? It's got to be this high-flying offense, I would think, would be a reason that someone would want to come play at Michigan State.
And now I want to get to, I guess, the most competitive game of the week. Brings in Purdue taking on Illini. This game's going to be at Purdue. It's pretty much a pick'em game. How you see this game?
It's interesting, right? Both teams. Ryan Walters obviously came over from Illinois, defensive coordinator. Really done a great job. Yeah, done a tremendous job. But I think when you see both programs, Purdue struggling defensively at times this season. It takes time for those defenses to really be able to settle in, because you have different personnel. Illinois probably played one of their better defensive games last week, and really a couple of quarters versus Penn State. But offensively is where this game is going to be won. They're going to have to throw it around. Both teams will want to. There are both teams are quite familiar with what they want to do because they've been on the staffs together. Quite a few staff members went over to Purdue from Illinois. So it's one of those games, man. And it probably is a pick 'em, but it's going to come down to who doesn't turn it over. But their quarterback at Purdue, I really like him a lot. Card, I think he has a chance to be a real special player. It's just a matter of not turning the football over and being able to take care of business. But this is going to be a fun one. Hopefully both teams are going to be 100%, and it should be a shootout.
Yeah, I expect this to be real personal. I mean, at the end, I expect a lot of hugs and a lot of, man, I miss you and good luck to you. But during the game, man, you can't tell me that the former defensive coordinator and now head coach at Purdue, he wants it. Illinois wants it. Yeah, this one may be fun to watch just knowing everything that's been going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, so I think it'll live up to billing. You know, they both teams, you know, fight. We talk about the East, and it's at least a little more settled. You believe who the best top three teams are at least, right. And then that middle section teams are fighting to stay there. But Maryland looks like, you know, they've cemented themselves right in that area just below those other teams. But the West is just wide open. And up until last week, when Minnesota went down to Northwestern, I would have told you Northwestern didn't have a shot this year either. But what they were able to do in overtime to what I believe is a good football team in Minnesota, for some reason, they got taken to the brink and ended up losing that game last week. So who knows what's going to happen in the West? It's wide open, just like it was last year. So we'll see. But one of these teams obviously is going to be in a much better position to win it after Saturday.
And speaking of West, I do want to wrap up with this because I think I saw this coming. I'm not even going to lie. I made a couple personal bets because people was like, Colorado's going to go out to Oregon and just destroy them. I'm like, hey, man, that's Colorado looked well against these three teams, but now they're going up in weight class. You know what I did not like is it was a lot of trash talking going on before the game. You had the Colorado players, you know, stomping on the O, and that's what people do. But how all of a sudden Dan Lanning now gets vilified for going out there and wanting to beat Deion and wanting to beat Colorado. And it's like, he's not a bad guy. He's the head coach of Oregon. He's not there to make the game easy. And it looked like it was a little personal for him. I mean, running the fake on your own 18-yard line, like he wanted that game over other games because I think that in his world, not enough people are talking about the Oregon Ducks. And that was all about the Colorado Buffaloes. And it was at Alston Stadium. And it just felt like they felt disrespected and they had to show the world, hey, this is still our house. We are in the Pac-12. Respect us.
Yeah, and think of it this way, right? They go from, you look at this game last year, right? No interest whatsoever.
Right.
And now you think about all the interest that you know the networks obviously have, but the fan bases have, and just people in general wanting to watch this Colorado team. I mean, the ratings from when they played Colorado State were off the charts, and that was a game that I don't think finished until maybe 2 a.m, something crazy like that. So, you know, they have a lot of eyeballs on them, and I think a lot of teams and a lot of players are going to take it personally. That why is everybody talking about Colorado when we're better? We're just a better team, but everybody's talking about them. So I think everyone's going to take it personal when they have an opportunity to line up against the Buffs right now. And they've got another big one this week at USC, so they'll be tested again.
Hey, Deion said, you better get me now because it ain't going to ever be this easy ever again. And, hey, I think it's going to be interesting to see. I do think that USC is probably going to go through them. I mean, no Hunter. I mean, the other son and the plays in the secondary that he's spitting up blood. So, yeah, this is not a good look. Depth. Colorado's biggest problem is always going to be depth.
Yep.
I told people the second some of your people start falling off, it was not going to be the same. And I think you're going to kind of see that for the rest of the year. I still think that they should probably make a bowl game. They should be able to go 6-6 because the back end of their schedule is going to be, that's where it really gets difficult, where they got a gauntlet for their final few games. So
yeah, and that's what they have to do. They have to stay healthy, right? Because their guys are playing a lot. And you talk about the depth, and you got to remember there are a lot of guys that came in there that were heralded that get there, and hey, they're not as good as we thought they were going to be. So you have a lot of that going on as well, which hurts the depth. So you're trying to develop the players that are there. You're going to need some guys to step up. But this is just going to continue to be a fascinating story. I think this is one of those things when you talk about Colorado. If you're looking for a head coach now, you're looking at what they've done in Colorado to change things and how quickly something like that could happen at your own university. You either like it or you don't. I doubt if there's some people that are right there in the middle with it, because it's thought provoking what he's done. People don't like it necessarily when you quote unquote run guys off, but it's worked out for them to this point. I mean, they have already exceeded their win total from a year ago, and quite frankly, I don't know how much they probably would have spent trying to garner the kind of attention that they've received since Deion has walked on that campus. I don't think you can measure it. I'm sure the applications for Colorado have gone through the roof, so admissions sure has their hands
merchandising.
Yeah. It's been unbelievable. It's been I think it'll be a fascinating case study in marketing. And also as far as owning and building your own individual brand. Because I think one of the things people may lose sight of is the brands and the different channels that not only he has, but his sons and daughters have as well about their social media footprint is huge. So they have done an unbelievable job of monetizing their name, image, and likeness there. Yeah.
And I did lie. You could help settle an argument real quick right now. Not saying I'm not forecasting by the end of the year, but right here.
Okay.
Right now, best college football team, Texas or Florida State?
Ooh. Right here, right now?
Right here, right now. Not saying who's going to win it all, but based off the body of work, Texas or Florida State?
Probably have to take Texas.
Same. Okay.
I would probably take Texas. They probably got their best team.
Florida State only because two of their biggest wins happened away from Tallahassee.
Yeah.
Which is never an easy thing to do, a neutral site game, and then they went and beat Clemson at a place where they haven't won in over 10 years. So, but no, that was just a debate that we had on the show of Florida State right here, right now, not down the line, but who had the best win. I mean, Texas did something that really nobody does. Nobody walks into Alabama and walks away with a victory. It wasn't a fluke. They flat out beat Alabama.
Alabama
wasn't used to that.
Yeah, it's I think this year more so than ever. Their teams. It may not be this one team that's just going to run through everybody. Georgia is Georgia, but it just seems like it is so many more teams that are out there that it looks like have an opportunity that have turned the corner in their own way. When you talk about Florida State now and the way they're playing, you talk about, Texas, you talk about Penn State, they're adding more teams to the mix. And quite frankly, I think it's great for college football that we have so many teams that look like they can win a national title. And that's what you're going to need to keep the interest and keep it, you talk about having that 12-team playoff. This is what it's about. I know it's still early in the season, things have to shake out, but you want to see this type of response. I mean, it's crazy to think about the Pac-12 and what they're doing right now, and then a year from now or less than that, it won't even exist as it currently does. So
Washington State and Oregon State gonna be looking at that Will Smith meme where he just in the house looking around like
what happened? Yeah, so they got their hands full, but it's fascinating. It's fun to watch, and I think it's only going to get better particularly when you look at some of these teams matchups coming down the line with some of our East matchups this season.
I know it's going to be fun. Howard, appreciate your time. Hey, guys, keep liking, subscribing, give us some great reviews. Tell your friends about the 5-Star Zone. Howard and I will be back next week. Howard, you can see him this weekend on the Big Ten Network. He'll be giving you that pregame show once again. Howard, appreciate your time, man. I'll see you next week.
All right, sounds good. Have a great weekend.
I see you. You too.